Hello, welcome to the channel. It's restoration time, and today we have an AA Service Bedford van from the 1960s. It's the Dinky Toys version. I got this car from a local flea market, and it was in a box of other die-cast cars that were all in a sorry state. And this cost me all of 60 pence. So let's take a closer look.
So here we have the Dinky Toys Bedford van. It's actually the AA van. So it's missing the AA logo here and here. And it will have a sign here that Dinky used on a couple of their vehicles. And it's similar to the police sign on top, minus this bit. So I'm going to fabricate something that resembles this to go on here. That should be fine. And the main fault with this casting is this, where it's been pushed down really hard, cracked it, buckled the whole roof, and it's the glass. Thankfully it hasn't broken. As you know, I've had bad luck with glass. It's pushed down onto the interior, and looks like the interior sunk down a little bit, but that should be okay. So I'm going to drill out the base. Before I do that, I'm going to sand these mushrooms here, these little domes, so that the drill is something to grab onto.
Luckily the interior is fine, as it's made of this flexible vacuum formed plastic. It's pretty simple in its form, but it looks pretty good from the outside. I just need to remove part of this rivet to release the window section. Yeah, I definitely need some new drill bits. I was pushing too hard on that rivet and it's cracked part of the fastening for the window section. Luckily the actual glass that you see from the outside is completely fine, so that'll clip back into place later. It's time to strip the paint, and I'm using some of the Dial paint remover from B&Q. I left this overnight, but it really didn't work. I think yellow paint is much more resilient than other paint. If you've ever used yellow paint in the past, it does take quite a few layers to actually get it to look dense and compared to other paints. So I'm thinking they must make it out of a much more tougher substance, because paint remover just doesn't touch it, especially on these older models. So I resorted to using a Dremel wire wheel to remove the rest of the paint and at the same time polish the vehicle.
Right then, I'm going to heat up the casting so that I can hammer out this big dent here above the windscreen. So I'm going to put this in some boiled water. I've had this on the radiator for a couple of minutes, just so that it's not too much of a shock when it goes in. Hopefully it won't crack. Now I'll leave that for a couple of minutes.
So I'm just using a block of wood and the weight of a hammer to reform the roof. I'm just doing it gently, and then every now and again I am reheating the casting just to make sure that the metal is malleable and it's not likely to crack. And I'm just going very steadily here, just using the weight of the hammer, so I'm not putting a lot of pressure down. So I'm going to put that back in the hot water and leave that for a minute and come back. There you go, it's getting there. I'm just going to test it with the glass in, and that'll give me a good guide as to how much more I've got to do. So let's put that back in. There you go. So it looks like it's fairly evenly flat now, but the whole roof here just needs raising. So I'll go a bit more, and then that should clear that groove there in the glass that you see here at the top of the glass. That sits inside the roof, and this bit is what you see. So a bit more. Some light fettling with a hand file makes all the difference. I find this Tamiya putty is fantastic for filling in small cracks and dents in your castings. Just be really careful not to get it on your skin though, because it does warn you on the packet that it is toxic and can cause you issues if you absorb it into your body. So wear a glove, and I find wearing a glove is probably the best applicator, because you can get a smooth finish afterwards. Before I forget, I need to drill out the posts ready for the new rivets. Okay, so I'm going to be using the Tamiya X8, the lemon yellow. I've added a couple of drops of the dark brown, just to give it slightly more of a mustard colour that will match the AA livery. I made the sign with some 1mm styrene plastic sheet cut to size, and then I glued them together using some plastic weld and filled the empty cavities with some milliput. And with some sanding and finer filler with work done with some Tamiya putty, I was able to get a good approximation of the die cast sign. Right, so to fix the AA sign to the top of the roof, these were originally riveted in. What I'm going to do is get a nail that fits into that hole. Just going to put that in there, trim it. If you can see in the bottom there, just there, that's going to rest against there. I'm going to trim this and glue this onto it with a hole in the middle, and there's another one there to stop it spinning around. For little parts like this, I find using a pin vise is much better, as you can be a lot more delicate. Alright, so I'm just finishing off the AA Services sign, and on the top it's got a little light that goes on top.
So I just made that out of a small roll of milliput. I'm just dabbing this into some glue. I'm going to place it on a little mark that I've made on top with a pin. I'm going to leave that to dry, and then I'll prime it all over, and then it'll be ready for spraying yellow to match the rest of the van. Alright, so now it's time to do the front grille. I'm going to be using some Humbrol enamel. It's the metallic 11. So I'm just using a number 1 paintbrush here. Hopefully it'll be fine enough. It won't put too much paint. I'm going to just go gently around all this. You see, the less paint you put on this, I find the better, so that you don't gunk up all the detail. Now admittedly a lot of this is filling in, but the fine paintbrush does help when we get to the border and the edges underneath the bumper.
Now I'm just adding some more details for the back bumper with the license plate and the rear headlights too.
Right, so it's decal time. I made these in Photoshop and printed them on water slide decal paper, and then sprayed them with a clear lacquer, and then waited a whole day for it to cure. So I'm going to cut these out, and I'm going to put these on the vehicle.
Setting the decals on a wet sponge like this means they don't get away from you and makes the whole process much more enjoyable. And then soaking up any extra water with a cotton bud will help the capillary action on the decal.
For the rear decal, I'm going to be using some softener because it'll be going over this seam line in the door there. So this will help the decal actually hug that surface there.
Just a few finishing touches for a bit of definition on the back headlights. Now this red I'm using looks a bit too dark, but it seems accurate looking at old photos of the van. The wheels on this Dinky are hard plastic, so I'm just giving them a refresh with some thinned out black Tamiya paint.
Alright, so now it's time to add the sign to the casting, and I've drilled 2 holes in the bottom, one for the centre to keep it in position and one to keep it from spinning round here. So I'll be using the ends of two nails, one a little bit shorter than the other, and they'll be going in through the bottom.
Thanks to Martin for recommending these nail polishing sponges. I'm just working through the grades 1 to 4 to buff out the scratches on the windscreen. Right, so it's time to assemble this all together. I actually kept the base unpainted because after I removed the paint and polished it, I really like the look of it. And looking at some old photos, some of the vans actually came like this with a polished base, so I'm keeping that. I've had terrible luck trying to add a mushroom to the ends of axles in the past, so on this I'll be putting a blob of super glue and setting it with baking soda. Now the axles have had some time to dry, it's time to put the base on. I'm using some rivets and super glue to fasten it all in place. The front rivet has been shortened as there wasn't a lot of clearance on the front post, so that snaps in there quite nicely. All secured with some super glue.
Right then, here we have it all assembled. The van was very well played with. All the paint was virtually missing or scraped off. We had a massive dent in the roof section here, and the whole window section was pushed into the body, and it was missing the sign. So I made a new sign out of some milliput and little sheets of plastic, painted everything, chromed the wheels, gave them a wash, did the grille in some enamel paint, and of course finished it off with some decals on the sides, on the sign, and on the back. Put in some little details like the door handle and the bumpers and the backlights there. Well, I really enjoyed making this one. It's always nice to make a part rather than buying a repo part on eBay, because I often find that buying parts for these cars costs many more times than the actual car itself. I hope you enjoyed it yourselves, and thank you to everyone that's been watching my videos and commenting. Really appreciate that. I always reply to all the comments. I think it's fantastic that this community has such positivity and constructive comments as well. Really nice.
Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back turning something old into something new.